All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us, for the folks that are here in the room in person, as well as our attendees that are online. Thank you for joining us for our Emmy Shaping the World Speaker Series. Today marks the end of Black History Month, and a goal of mine, personally and professionally, was to amplify the voices of Black alums. So today we have joining us David Brown, who's going to share with us his journey after navigating master's and doctorate degree from Georgia Tech and me, and what he did as far as pivoting from industry back into academia. So I want to welcome you all. A few housekeeping. We do have refreshments in the back, so if you haven't grabbed something, please feel free to. And if you haven't scanned the QR code to check in, please do so before you leave today. For our attendees that are joining us online, feel free to use the chat for comments as well as questions. We will address those questions in the last 15 minutes of our series today. So if you would like to ask David anything, feel free again to use the chat. You don't necessarily have to use the Q&A feature, but just drop it in the chat for us. I'm going to go ahead and move forward with introducing Dr. Brown, and we'll go ahead and get started. So Dr. Brown completed his BS, MS, and PhD in mechanical engineering at the Georgia Institute of Technology. During his doctoral program, he used ultra-fast lasers to measure the thermal properties of two-dimensional materials and thin films, motivated by the thermal management of electronic devices and other energy systems. David received multiple fellowships, including the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship. After graduation, he joined Raytheon Intelligence and Space in El Segundo, California, where he performed thermal analysis and design of spacecraft hardware. Following a brief stint in industry, which he's going to share with us a little bit about today, he completed a postdoc in the Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering Department at the University of California, Los Angeles. He is currently a research scientist in the Mechanical Engineering Department at University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. And his research currently focuses on high temperature thermal properties and cooling hypersonic leading edges. So a fun fact that I would like to share with you all about David is I actually met David back in 2016 when I first started at Georgia Tech. He was a graduate student. We were co-located in the same office space, and he introduced me to what became one of my favorite restaurants, Mr. Everything. I fell in love with that place, especially when I was pregnant, and I used to Uber Eat there all the time. He was a really great graduate student, very fun, and just a good person to get to know. So it is my pleasure to welcome him back virtually and allow him to share his journey with you all, with us today. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn it over to David.
All right, thank you, Courtney. I appreciate that introduction. And I'm glad I was able to introduce you to the greatness that is Mr. Everything. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, like Courtney said, my name is David Brown. I'm a research scientist at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. Today, I'm going to present a talk about my journey from industry back to academia. First, I just want to acknowledge a few people. I want to acknowledge Courtney, of course, and the Woodruff School for inviting me back to share my journey with you all. And I also like to thank everyone who's helped me along my journey. That includes family, friends, colleagues, and mentors. Okay, as Courtney already said, I completed 3 degrees from Georgia Tech. My last degree was a PhD in 2019. After completing my PhD, I joined industry. But before we get into that, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my background. So I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. I was actually born at Crawford Long Hospital, which is now part of the Emory University system. I grew up in Southwest Atlanta on Cascade Road, to be exact. And, I grew up like a regular kid. I played sports and had a lot of friends in the neighborhood. I went to church, and when I went to high school, my high school, Westlake High School in Southwest Atlanta, had a math and science magnet program. Though I wasn't a part of the magnet program, I took all of the magnet classes. So I was always good at math and science. But before I entered the university, I didn't know what an engineer was. So my journey is a little non-traditional to start with. So I applied to Georgia Tech after high school, and I was waitlisted, and I ended up not getting in. So I went to Valdosta State University. Valdosta State is in South Georgia, and it was the furthest away from home that I could go and still qualify for the Hope Scholarship. So for those of you who don't know, Georgia had a program that was funded by the Georgia Lottery called the Hope Scholarship. So all graduating seniors who maintain a 3.0 GPA in high school were able to get free tuition to any state college in Georgia. And that includes Georgia Tech. I think at some point they cut it down from full tuition to about 80 or 90% tuition. But to my understanding, they brought it back. So it's a really good program. And I think they have another program where the valedictorians of any school in the city of Atlanta are automatically admitted to some of the top schools in the state. So after transferring to Georgia Tech, I excelled in my undergraduate studies. I participated in undergraduate research. I sought and did internships. And my academic advisor at the time suggested that I apply to grad school. So I did it. Some of the biggest challenges I faced in undergrad were mostly time management. And also I suffered from a little bit of imposter syndrome as a transfer student. So if you look at the picture on the right, this is actually one of my favorite pictures. So I feel that I'm the person that went left. I chose calculus, and real people usually try to go away from that. Okay, so as I stated, I finished my undergrad and I entered grad school with Georgia Tech. My focus in grad school was on heat transfer and energy transport. So specifically, we were interested in studying the thermal properties of electronic materials. So everyone has a phone, everyone has a computer, and when you use it for a long time, what happens? It gets hot. You might not think much of it, but as you continue to use your phone and it continues to get hot, it goes through a bunch of thermal cycles. And eventually that's what causes most electronic devices to fail. So this sounded like an interesting problem to me, and I wanted to learn more about it and figure out ways to solve it. So during grad school, I had a few fellowships. I think the most well-known fellowship I had was the NSF Graduate Research Fellowship. The National Science Foundation is a government agency. They fund fundamental research all over the country. But I was also awarded the Georgia Tech USIM Fellowship. It was formerly known as the Sloan Fellowship, but this fellowship was for PhD candidates, and it provided supplemental funding and seminars and activities, to help them get through the rigors of the PhD program. So some of the biggest challenges I faced were a demanding schedule, and again, a little bit of imposter syndrome. Actually, I think everyone in grad school suffers from imposter syndrome. So I don't feel too bad about that now. And you shouldn't feel bad about that if you feel imposter syndrome either. So on the right, these are just two pictures of me in my element in grad school. So the first picture is me in the clean room at Georgia Tech. And I had on not only a bunny suit, I had on acid protection. And so I spent a lot of time in the clean room, gowning and ungowning. That's not fun to do, just to go in and do your research. But it was a necessary evil. So the picture on the right, believe it or not, was actually taken at about 3 a.m. That was me in the materials characterization facility. trying to get measurements at 3 a.m. because that was the only time that the tool was available. So these are the kind of things that, you know, we had to go through in order to complete our grad school education. But it's not all. So these are some of the highlights of my time in grad school. I really enjoyed traveling to conferences and sharing my research and learning about research that's being done all over the world, networking with other researchers, some my senior, some my junior, and I still maintain some of those connections today. So this picture on the left was from a conference in Hawaii. And I have to acknowledge Professor Andrei Fedorov, who invited us to go on this trip to Hawaii with him. And it was really a life-changing experience. So for those who don't know, Hawaii is one of the most isolated places on Earth. It's actually 2,500 miles from Tokyo and about 2,000 miles from Los Angeles. So I don't know if you knew that. I didn't know that, but I thought that was pretty interesting. And when we got there, you know, my mind was just blown. I didn't know people were living like that, you know. So that was a great opportunity, and I'm glad that I had it. So another thing I'm really proud of is being able to mentor other students when I was in grad school. So I mentored some undergrad students and also some younger grad students. But the picture shown here is actually from high school students from the Atlanta public school system. So they came to Georgia Tech for a semester and participated in research with grad students in different departments. And I remember being a student in the APS system in elementary and middle school. In high school, I went to a county school, but it was still within the city limits. But I'm glad I was able to give back to people in my community. And I look forward to having opportunities like this again in the future. So one thing I learned after transferring to Tech is that it's really important to do internships or co-ops. And luckily I was able to network and myself into an internship. It was not easy, but you know, I figured out a way to do it. So Georgia Tech has really great career fairs, but for some reason the career fair never worked for me. So to get my first internship, I went to the Georgia Tech Alumni House, and I sat at a computer, and I went through the Georgia Tech alumni database, and I just emailed everyone on the list until I found someone who had a position open. And believe it or not, a lot of people responded. So that's one good thing I like about Tech. Tech has a really strong alumni database who really care about seeing the students succeed. I mean, some of the responses I got, you wouldn't believe. I mean, I remember one person specifically telling me that she was no longer in engineering. She was a housewife, but she said if she had a position open, she would definitely give me a position. And I really appreciated that. So my second internship was during grad school. So one of my PhD advisors started a company based on his research. And they manufacture a carbon nanotube-based thermal interface material. And it's shown really promising results so far. Now, this was a lot different than working in a corporate environment. So some of you may want to look into working in a startup. So I'll share a little bit about my experience. So working in a startup, everything you do matters. Everybody has a role to play. You're not just a cog in the wheel. You know, if someone needs you to do something, then you're doing it for the company. You know, you're doing it for the CEO. Like you're really doing it really matters. And I can appreciate that type of environment because that's how research is. When you're a grad student or a professor, you know, we're not doing it for fun. You know, so if your professors ask you to do something, it's meant to help you. It's meant to help your research. You know, I know it's tough sometimes, but Once you get to the other side, you'll see everything was worth it. Okay, so after my PhD experience, I decided I want to try my hand in the industry. So I got a job at Raytheon Space and Airborne. The name has since been changed to Raytheon Intelligence and Space. So a few years ago, Raytheon merged with United Technologies. And so now the whole company is called Raytheon Technologies. So at Raytheon, I worked on thermal design for satellites. And it's not really related to my research, but it was still in the thermal engineering space. So believe it or not, this is not just my opinion. A lot of space systems rely totally on thermal. If you think about it, you're in a vacuum of space. You have a bunch of components internal to the satellite that are generating heat. And you also have radiation coming from different sources in space. You have some components that need to be cold, some components that need to be hot, you know? So you have to do a lot of thermal control to maintain the cold components and maintain the hot components and keep everything working. When you put something up in space, if it breaks, you can't just fly up and fix it, you know? So these things are really over-designed. So a satellite is really designed to last about 12 years. This was a good experience for me. I'm glad I got to see the design process firsthand. Okay. So I know the question you're all asking, who goes to industry and then goes back and does a postdoc? That's what I did. Yeah, it's not a traditional career path, but I'm really happy with the decision I made. And I'll tell you why I left. To be honest, I needed to be fulfilled with the work that I was doing. And one thing that you'll learn after you graduate is you'll start planning your life 5 to 10 years ahead. And if you don't like what you're doing and you can't see yourself doing it 5 to 10 years later, then you should probably be doing something else. And so I left Raytheon after 18 months. I found a really good opportunity to do a postdoc at UCLA. And I'm happy with that decision. And now I'm at the University of Michigan, and I'm still doing the research that I love. So I ask you, what are you passionate about? You should try your hardest to find something that you're passionate about. And whether that's something related to your job or something outside of work, it doesn't matter. Just find something that you're passionate about. Find something to live for. How does ME shape the world? And that is mechanical engineering, not me. That's how does ME shape the world? Well, with the mechanical engineering degree, you can really do anything in the world you want. Mechanical engineering is the liberal arts of engineering. You get to see every aspect of engineering. So when I was in grad school, I was a TA. And I really met some interesting students. You know, I remember one student who told me that he was going to medical school after he graduated. I even had one student who was going to seminary school. He was going to be a priest, a mechanical engineer, and a priest. Now that's a hell of an engineer. Okay, so before I leave you, I just want to tell you a few things that I would tell myself when I was younger. And that's how I treat my mentees. I try to give them information that I wish I had when I was younger. So first, take advantage of every opportunity to improve yourself. You'll be presented with a lot of opportunities. And I know you won't be able to do everything, but if you think it's something that'll help you in the long run or the short term, give it a try. If you don't like it, you can do something else. Practice your soft skills. One thing I learned in industry, talking to managers and such, the reason a lot of people don't get hired is not because of their technical skills. It's because of the soft skills. Maybe they don't interview well, you know? Maybe they don't know, maybe they don't know how to schmooze per se. So when you're going out and you want somebody to hire you, of course you want to have the technical skills that you need. But sometimes it helps if you're somebody that the hiring manager would like to have a beer with. So just something to keep in mind. Network in every direction. So you have to network up with people that are more senior than you. Network down with people that are junior to you. And also network laterally with people who are your peers. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Hey, if you don't know something, ask. There are no dumb questions. Find ways to give back. Volunteer in your community, on campus. Just find ways to give back. Find ways to spend your time doing something for someone other than yourself. And believe in yourself. Of course, there'll be moments where you doubt your skills, but overall, believe in yourself. And trust the process. It's hard to see the forest from the trees. So when you're in the weeds, whether you're working on your degree or working on a project at work, it's hard to see the forest from the trees. Sometimes you just have to trust the process and keep moving along until you see the light at the end of the tunnel. Okay. So I'll leave you with this. The shortest distance between 2 points isn't a straight line. If you consider yourself on a sphere, the shortest distance between 2 points is a geodesic. It's an arc. It's not a straight line. So sometimes when you feel like you're off the path, just know you're on your arc. So just continue to follow your arc. All right. Thank you for your attention. And thank you for having me.
Okay. Let's go ahead and give David a round of applause. That was amazing. Thank you for your time and sharing your journey with us. I was curious to hear about the distance. So I'm glad you brought that analogy home. We have a few questions in the chat, but I also want to give some folks who are in the room. Do you guys have any questions? You guys can feel free to stand, introduce yourself. Nope, we'll take one. We'll take the question in the chat first.
So Marsha Brown wants to know, can you talk about imposter syndrome?
Did you hear the question, David?
Yeah, I did. It's actually my mom. This is embarrassing. Okay. So to me, imposter syndrome, it's a feeling that you get when you're in a room. Maybe you feel like you're not qualified to be in that room. Maybe you feel like you stick out in that room. And so that feeling can weigh heavily on you and affect your performance. But from what I learned, I just have to assume that that's a natural feeling because a lot of people that I interact with have that same feeling. And you just have to accept it and just fight through it. I still feel like that, honestly. But, like I said, I just learned to accept it and I don't let it affect my work.
There's unless there's one in the room, I have a second question from the chat. Francesca wants to know, what would you tell someone thinking about doing grad school at Ann Arbor?
I would tell them to look at tech. Tech is, it's top 5. It may be number 4, number 3 or number 4 now. So I would say look at tech. But no, seriously. Ann Arbor's a good school. And since I've been there, it sort of feels similar to Georgia Tech. I would say the difference is, it's a university versus Institute of Technology. So they have a full curriculum. So that just makes the campus demographics a little different. But if you're thinking about doing grad school in Ann Arbor, I would say dress warm. Because it does get cold. I mean, there have been a few days that, to me, it was just too cold to go outside. So yeah, dress warm. But anywhere you go, if you do good work, people will notice you.
I actually have a question for you, David. Let me go back to my notes to make sure. All right, so you talked briefly about your pivot and not being fulfilled in work. So I know from our conversation, you shared a little bit more in detail, but can you share to the folks that are online, what does that mean? Like, what were the hours? What was the situation that caused you to say, hey, industry is cool, this money is great, but I think I want to go back to academia for X, Y, and Z. What was it that actually pushed you and allowed you to make that decision to come back to go in a different direction? Like, what was good? What was bad? What?
That's a good question. To be honest, I always had a feeling that I wanted to go back to academia at some point. I just wasn't sure when. But what really pushed me over the edge was COVID. So I was living in El Segundo, California. And for those who don't know, that is a really nice area. I was living about 2 miles from the beach. I probably went to the beach more during my time living there than my whole life combined. But during COVID, everything was shut down. Like even the beach was closed. So all I had was work. And as I sat there working, I just got the feeling, hey, it's a good job, decent hours, good salary. But, I just want to be fulfilled with my work. I want to make an impact on people's lives. And I feel like in academia, you can do that. So I'll just say a few good things about industry. So one thing I don't miss about grad school is not having weekends and nights free. So when you're working in the industry, for the most part, when people clock out at 5 or 6, like they're gone. On the weekends, it's the weekend. Work is work, but this is the weekend. So I would say the work-life balance was pretty good. Again, did I mention that the salary was good? I really like my coworkers as well. Most of my coworkers. Believe it or not, there are a lot of really, really smart people working in the industry. Like I met people who, I feel would have been great grad students, but they chose a different path. So industry's not all bad. It just wasn't for me.
Thank you for sharing. I think we have a few questions online.
Yes. Isaac said, thank you, David, for sharing your experience. My question is related to what you mentioned about a 5-10 year plan. When you transitioned from Raytheon to postdoc, did you have an idea of where you hope the postdoc would lead in 5 to 10 years? And is becoming a professor one of your aspirations? Or do you prefer research scientist positions, or are you still figuring it all out?
That's a great question. So I think the analogy I used was you can't see the forest from the trees. So I'll speak for myself, and I know other students might feel like this. When you're in school, the only thing you really see is the finish line. The only thing you see is your degree and getting a job and making money. But you're going to get a job and make money for the rest of your life. So once you get that job, then what? So that's when the 5 to 10 year plan starts to come. You know, I'll speak for myself. In a technical role where most engineers start out, your career trajectory is to stay in a technical role or go into management. And for me, I probably would have stayed in a technical role. So since I like technical things, I decided to go back to academia, where I can create my own problems and try to solve them. So that's probably what I missed most about academia when I was in industry. So as far as my career plan now, yeah, my plan is to become a professor. I'm actually on the job market right now. So yeah, my overall plan is to become a professor.
Can I piggyback off of that before we go on to the next question? Was there a mentor or a faculty member or a professor that you looked up to during your time at Georgia Tech when you were here in mechanical engineering that helped shape you wanted to come back into academia and become a professor?
Yeah, there were a few. That's one thing about Tech. Tech has a lot of rock star professors from a lot of different backgrounds. I would say my PhD advisors, you know, they motivated me to not only become a very skilled researcher, but also to pursue my passions. So I remember Dr. Satish Kumari telling me that try to find a job that you want to do. You know, try your hardest to get the job that you want. And that stuck with me. And I remember Baracola just always helped me believe in myself. I remember Sam Graham was just there, and you know, he was Sam Graham, you know, he was big time. And there were, you know, a bunch of other professors that I took classes from. Maybe I interacted with their grad students or maybe collaborated with them on projects, you know, or maybe I didn't know them at all. I just saw them. I saw them in their success from a distance. And I said, hey, I want to be successful like that. So, you know, that it's, yeah, tech is a really good place, man. Tech is a really good place.
I'll allow Eden to ask the question that she sees online. Do you see another?
No, that was the last one, unless there's more.
So I do believe that was the last question that we saw online. Do we have any additional comments or questions or thoughts from our audience here in person? If not, I would like to just thank everyone for joining us in person and also for our attendees who joined us online. I just want to give David a round of applause again for participating and just spending your time with us this afternoon. We thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, pretty sure it's a cold day in Atlanta today, so I'm pretty sure it's even colder in Michigan. So stay warm. As far as reminders and announcements for the folks that would like to join us for the rest of the speaker series, we do have a Women's History Month panel next week. In honor of Women's History Month, we have 4 female Emmy alums that will be sharing their journey. And we're collaborating with Women of Woodruff, which is WOW. So you all can join us in person or virtually again. It will be on March 7th at 2:30 p.m. And so after that panel discussion, we're gonna transition into a graduate student, staff, and faculty social hour in the Love Building. So just save the date for that. And if you would like to see the rest of our speaker series for this semester, you can just go online, Emmy Shaping the World, on our Emmy website to see the rest of the schedule. Thank you again, everyone. I appreciate it. And if you would like to have a personal conversation or chat with David, you can come up to the podium and ask him a question or engage with him here. But thank you so much. I'm gonna go ahead and close us out online. Thank you all.
Thank you.